Good afternoon, folks. This is the third episode of the Quote of Arms podcast. On here, we talk about people's favorite tribes, why they like them, what they're like, how they win, and such. Today, I've got a very special guest. This is
RorBearPig,
Awesome, who goes by
RorBearPig on Twitter and MTGA.
Sweet. And so, where can people get a hold of you?
People can find me on Twitter under the name RorBearPig. So, and that's spelled RorBearPig.
Yep, roar in place of the man, otherwise Man-Bear-Pig, eh?
Yep.
Nice. So, what is the tribe that is special to you?
It's not one specific tribe, but it's kind of like a bunch of tribes.
Is it
I'm personally fond of, like, mono... I like any tribe that's mono-red, basically. So, like, goblins or dragons or...
Okay. Is there a particular type of card?
I personally like cards like Goblin Guide, so aggressive cards like Goblin Guide or Monastery Swift Spear or Lightning Bolt.
Sounds like there's a lot of one-drops in there.
Yep. I'm pretty fond of one-drops.
It's actually a deck I played once upon a time that had Goblin Guides and had... it was a Jeskai colored deck, but it had... man, I'm going to draw a blank on it, I know. That's a shame. Ranger of Eos. To find two Goblin Guides.
Interesting.
I'm certainly a fan of that card as well.
Yeah, Ranger of Eos is a pretty good Magic card.
Mm-hmm. So, what are those cards that you were talking about that you say you like so much?
Well, Goblin Guide and Swift Spear are pretty self-explanatory. They're just one-drops with haste that you want to get in. One of the Swiss Spear is a human monk, and then the Goblin Guide's obviously a goblin. But the point is, like, they're just one drops with haste that get in really quick and can add up to a lot of damage really quickly.
So what makes Goblin Guide so special is that it's a one drop with haste, and how much power and toughness does it have?
It is a 2/2.
Which is different from one of the classic one-drop goblins with haste, which was Raging Goblins.
Yes.
Because Raging Goblins was a 1/1 for 1 with haste.
Yes.
So, what is it about Goblin Guide that makes it better than Raging Goblins?
Just the 2/2 stat makes it better. Raging Goblin doesn't have the drawback of when Goblin Guide attacks, you have to your opponent reveals the top card of their library, and if it's a land, it goes into their hand. Raging Goblin obviously doesn't have that drawback, but Raging Goblin also isn't nearly as strong as Goblin Guide. Although I have played cards kind of like Raging Goblin in Standard, so.
Hey. So, what is that drawback on Goblin Guide?
If they reveal the top card of the library, and if it's a land, it goes into their hand. So basically, the drawback on that is if they hit a bunch of lands in a row, they end up with more. They can end up with more cards or more lands than you, but it's not too big of a drawback.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the aggressive decks, Burner Goblins usually doesn't care about the amount of wins that your opponent has.
Yeah, especially in multiples, right?
Right.
So, for a card like Goblin Guide, it has this negative effect in 1v1, correct?
Correct, yeah.
If you're in multiplayer, does it still feel like a drawback?
Not as much, but like, I've never played Goblin Guide in multiplayer, so...
I played it in Oathbreaker before. Not in Commander, of course, but...
Yeah, it could go into a multiplayer deck, but I've personally never seen it in a multiplayer deck, so...
So we're on the subject of Goblin Guide. and how it's similar and different from from some other cards. How it can actually do some interesting things in multiplayer if you run it in, like in Oathbreaker. I ran it in just a generic red deck wins deck because I wanted to see if that could convert over into the format.
Sure.
So Goblin Guide has its negative its drawback of providing the opponent with extra lands, with getting the opponent through land pockets and drawing them into action, whereas they otherwise might have drawn lands, which wouldn't necessarily help them.
Right.
It can also make an opponent's keep better, like if they kept a hand that had like a one lander.
Yeah.
Although you're also dealing with the Goblin Guide attacking you every turn, so that's not necessarily better.
Right. I mean, like I said, in the right deck, it's not too huge of a drawback.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you're playing, like, against, like, Jund, for instance, it might be a bit issue, but even then, the amount of damage going through is more important than them having a bunch of lands.
Absolutely. So, another card that's in some contention in terms of whether it's good in Commander or not or in Commander and other formats, is Bolt. Bolt's kind of like the archetypical red spell, right?
Yes, it's the poster boy archetypical red spell that sees multiple. It sees play in every format it's legal in,
Mm-hmm.
I believe.
It's legal in Commander, and I don't know how often it's seen in Commander. Although I have worked hard to make it work.
I personally I played in my Torbran deck in Commander, but like it's just because it's an easy slot. It's the reason I have it in my Torbran deck is because it's just easy slot in, and I'm using the Magic Fest foil in my Commander deck, so I thought it would be an excuse to use it.
Yeah, most of my red decks either want to trigger prowess, want to deal direct damage, and can amplify the damage. So I use it quite a bit as well.
Yeah.
Even if the rate isn't necessarily as solid as some of the other cards. There have been a lot of damage doublers printed recently.
Oh, for real, yeah.
I think one of the more recent ones I can think of is like Angrat's Marauders. There's some potent ones that'll come out there, and there's also a lot of good copy effects, especially with Prismari, but even before that.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Like, there's even the damage tripler in the form of Fiery Emancipation, I believe is what it's called.
Oh, yeah, that one's pretty. I like that one a lot.
That's a good card.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, you have your Furnace of Wrath effects, obviously.
Yep. I mean, there are some that are somewhat unsung. I think I have a Koth deck that with a copy that has Raid from Consotark here, and that's a way to double as well.
Right.
There's a few different ways to just amplify Lightning Bolt, and I love that. So it's pretty clear how they win, but what I like about Red is that it has different ways to win. So what are the different ways that you can use a card like Lightning Bolt?
Well, you can either use the Lightning Bolt to kill their important creatures, like a Mana Dork or something, or you can throw it up to the face. And depending upon what you're doing, depending upon what you're playing against and what you're doing, you can either take a control. You can either be the control deck, or you can be the aggressive deck.
Yeah, I like that Red is able to assume either position, and that Bolt is useful in either scenario. It's kind of like
if you're playing, yeah. So like, if you're playing against like a deck that combos off pretty quickly, like in fact you want to bolt their creatures before they have the opportunity to kill you with their creatures.
Yeah, that also goes with the old Bolt the Bird strategy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I like how Bolt. So I have a friend who also loves Burn. In fact, Chandra is his favorite, one of his favorite characters in any medium.
Nice.
So Unsummon is my favorite card because of the versatility it has, where you can bounce their creature or your creature, protect something, enable an attack, reuse an ETB, things like that. He is to Lightning
Right.
Bolt what I am to Unsummon. Just all the different
Okay.
varieties of ways you can use it. So what's a
Yeah.
creative way that you've used a Lightning Bolt before?
A creative way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not necessarily. I haven't necessarily done it with lightning bolt, but sometimes if your opponent targets in standard, if your opponent targets a creature with stomp, and you have a bolt or a bolt like card to answer stomp, you can use that bolt card to kill your creature so the stomp doesn't go off and the Bone Crusher Giant fizzles.
Nice. So I like how
It's not a
that's
really common,
really.
it's not a really common play in
Mm-hmm.
modern, but it is like standard.
Mm-hmm. You could always do that with something like a shock as well.
Yeah, that too. Or even use your own stomp to stop their stomp.
Oh, Stompception.
Yep.
So when you're talking about these different red decks, what is their general identity?
I would say their general identity would be fast pace, aggressive, want to finish the round in time to grab a sandwich. It's not always fun to play against, but when you have they last night I played modern at a friend's house and I lost. I went 2-1, but he was packing. My loss was to my buddy playing Dredge,
Mm-hmm.
and the Dredge player was packing things like Leyline of Sanctity and new uh, the new red white cathartic reunion, which helped him out in the matchup.
Yeah, that seems like it. The red white cathartic union would gain a little bit of life. And I know that people were already starting to run the. I think it is Mardu colored, but it's black on the front half, red Boros on the back half. Flashback
Yeah,
spell, and they were running that with a zombie that could play itself from the graveyard if you gain 3 life.
right.
I,
Yeah,
I remember seeing that
I believe
variant.
that's
So
correct.
that seems like an interesting way to slot into that. I haven't really looked into modern since, really since a little bit after Modern Horizons, but definitely haven't
Okay.
looked at it since the pandemic.
Yeah. I actually just started playing modern again, after a year of being locked down and all that. So
Yeah, that seems to be a good way to get into it because the burn cards for Modern are mostly going to stay the same.
yeah, I've owned the burn deck for a while. It's just I actually haven't had an opportunity. Like before the pandemic, my FNM was one of my FNMs was primarily modern, but then all the shops closed and all that. So
Yeah, I played Modern mostly on PTQ, the PPTQ and regional PTQ circuit. I had some good success with a
yeah,
variety of different decks there.
yeah, I've had success in a couple PPTQs with Burn, also, if that means anything. So,
Do you prefer the burn variant or the prowess?
I'm more partial to Burn personally, but I believe Prowess at the moment Prowess is better positioned because Prowess can just go faster against some of the decks in the meta, and it's not as weak to Hada's Burnos.
Yeah, especially something like
Oh,
Leyline of Sanctity. I think if you're dealing more damage from creatures than you are from the burn spells, then it seems to be better positioned against something like the Leyline.
right.
And if you're adding toughness anyways, you could even do something like flame jab your own swift spear.
Yeah, or lava dart it just to grow it.
Oh yeah, that's
Sure.
that's what I just think of flame jab because it's what I used early on when I was playing.
All right. Yeah.
But yeah, the lava dart is the one that you would probably use.
Yeah. I actually have experience playing both decks, so but I've played Burn a lot more, obviously.
Mm-hmm. So what makes Burn interesting to you?
Just the fact that like it fits my play style and it's not too. It's not. People say it's a helmet deck and that it's like super easy to play, but it's not always that easy to play. So,
Oh, yeah, especially when we're
um,
talking about some of those high level plays like bolting your guy in response to the stomp and such. There's a lot of intricacies to go into it.
yeah, like there's a known MTGO player named Sandy Dog MTG, and he plays nothing but red decks. So,
Yeah, him and Patrick Sullivan, who's known as Basic Mountain, I believe.
yes. I don't know if Patrick plays as much anymore, but I know Sandy Dog plays like nearly every weekend, and either on MTG or MTG Arena.
Tom Ross used to play more of the prowess style, but he was also another
Yeah,
another proponent of the cheap red decks.
right.
I remember him playing mono red heroic, and that was incredible to see.
I remember that deck. Yeah, I played it a few times. So,
I still have a lot of the pieces of it, but that was a cool one to see him go through that run with a relatively budget deck.
right.
That's another one of the things that people tend to really like about red is that not only is it cheap on the mana curve, it's cheap on the wallet.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like the Boros burn is a little bit more expensive because you need fetches and you need shocks, but you need the rise and lands. But mono red is just mono red can be just as good. I actually think mono red might get. I want to say it's better than Boros burn, but it would probably it I could see it being a contender with Flame Rust and Mon Horizons too.
Now, other than the deck thinning, why do red decks need fetches?
I wouldn't say red needs switches, but like Boros needs switches to grab its colors, and also you play Boros Searing Blaze,
Yeah,
so you don't necessarily want to hold. You don't want to main phase. You don't always want to main phase your Searing Blazes, so which is why you have the fetches.
yep, yeah. The Searing Blazes and the flexibility that it offers. There is a little bit of deck thinning, but now there's also additional cards that have different basic land types. For example, if you're playing Boros Burn in Commander, you might want that to get Mistveil Plains,
Yeah,
which you can then use with Sunforger to start looping burn spells.
yeah. I've never actually played it in Commander, but that does sound interesting.
For a long time I wanted to see if I could find a deck that could work with that, and eventually I made it with Quintorius Field Historian.
Okay.
But I mean, there is let's see, Fire Song and Sunspeaker.
Oh yeah, that card. Yeah, that was a popular card in like Brawl back in the day.
Yeah, I have a friend who wound up making a Boros Burn deck with that. His is more specialized in burn. My Quintorius is more about flashback,
Nice.
but it does have a heavy burn package.
Yeah, that makes sense. 'Cause, like, I feel like the Sunspeaker is more of a burn-based general than Quintorius, but I've never actually played either. So,
So, what was it that initially drew you to the color red? Like when you were beginning playing, was your first deck a red deck?
it actually wasn't. The first deck I played when I started playing was standard black-white tokens, and that deck was kind of an aggressive deck. You basically filled the board with tokens and put anthems on the board to make them bigger and hit them with an army of like spirits and such. But eventually, after that deck rotated out, I saw I saw a few people in my area doing well with red decks, and I figured I'd give it a shot. And then the first time I actually played Red, I did well at my F&M, and then I've kind of been hooked since.
Neat. So was that around like Lorwyn Shadowmoor time?
It was actually around Innistrad Scar, or yeah, it was Innistrad and Scar's block towards the end of that rotation.
Oh, so like Lingering Souls and such?
Lingering Souls, Midnight Haunting, Honor of the Pure, yeah.
Oh, neat. Yeah, I started playing competitively around Lorwyn time, so that had some black white tokens there too.
Yeah, that was a little bit before my time, but I've been around card games most of my life, so
Nice.
I was aware of Magic. I just wasn't aware of what was in Magic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's like a Johnny Goldmain, Windbrisk Heights, those cards. So, what was it about red that drew you to the color?
It's just one of my favorite colors in general, and all of the cards I thought looked cool. All of the cards and artwork I thought looked cool. So
Neat. Were there particular cards whose artwork you were drawn to?
I personally like Hellrider. So
Oh, neat.
Hellrider was Hellrider was like a big staple in Red when I started playing it, and
So how
yeah,
so Hellrider is a
actually
3/3, I believe, for 4, and when creatures you control attack, the opponent takes a damage.
yes,
I remember there
and it
was a
has hate.
has haste as well. Nice. And I remember there was a
Yeah,
deck called Boat Brew that had that. Uh,
nice.
the Boat Brew deck was basically red white tokens.
Okay, yeah, I could see Hellrider being good at that.
Oh yeah, it was filthy. That deck. Oh man, no, those were the days. That was Brian Kowal, who popularized that one. It was called Boat Brew because he made it on a cruise.
I don't think I've ever seen that deck. We'll have to look it up. So
So, what about the art of Hellrider was so interesting?
it's a demon riding a hound. So like riding a hound and leading an army. So I just kind of thought that aspect of it was interesting.
Oh, neat. He's got a little doggo buddy,
Yep.
and he's the doggo has a chain leash. Oh, that is adorable. What is it about burn spells that you enjoy?
I just enjoy like either sending them to the face or dealing with creatures that like I can't otherwise deal with. So like most of the time, I'd rather just stun them for 3 or 4. But if if I can't do like ideally, I'd like to hit my opponent for 3 or 4 most of the time. But like if there's like a problematic threat, I have to sometimes get a 2 for 1 out of me. So
Do you enjoy the math that comes with trying to sequence the spells correctly?
yes, I actually do. And it's funny you say that because I'm actually not that great at math, but I am great with. I've been told I've been great with like burn math and combat math. So
And that's one of the reasons why I love. I'm a teacher, and I love using math as a teacher. I love using magic as a teaching tool. So, what's an example of timing and sequencing involving burn spells?
if you're playing the mirror and they go for like a lightning heal, let's say they have red white open and they go for a lightning helix and they're at 3. You can respond to their lightning helix by bolting them or helixing them back before they have the opportunity to gain the life and kill them.
Nice. Have you done some things like have like attack in a way that doesn't seem profitable, and then with the damage marked, finish the creature off?
I have done that a few times, yeah.
I take so much pleasure in those types of
Not
plays.
very often, but yeah.
I take so much pleasure in those types of plays, especially in Commander when people don't really expect Bolt, and so they're like, okay, I'm going to block with my Commander, and the Commander will take The commander has 5 toughness, they'll take 3 damage. Like, okay, I'll shock it.
Another trick play you can do with burn is if you play against like a pro red creature like Core Firewalker or Master of Waves, and they go to block your red guy, like let's say you have a Goblin Guide or in the Swift Spear, and they go to block your Goblin Guide with Core Firewalker, you can actually Skull Crack in response for damage to make it so the pro red so damage can be prevented and pro red doesn't save their guy.
That's actually a thing with Teferi's Protection, too. So you can actually kill somebody with commander damage with even when they're behind the Teferi's Protection.
Interesting, I did not know that.
Teferi's Protection says that they have says that they have protection from the damage and their life total can't change. It doesn't say that they can't take commander damage.
That makes sense.
So they can. So if you do something like Skull Crack attack, you can actually kill them with commander damage, even though they're under the Teferi's Protection.
Nice.
Just little things like that are what makes red so special.
For sure.
How do you feel about burn spells that don't target?
They can be pretty good. Like cards like Flame Rift. There's like a lot of talk around Flame Rift in Modern right now. So I don't know whether how to fit into like Boros Burn or not, what to cut, what not to cut. But like it does. The thing about Flame Rift is it does 4 damage to each player, but also does gets around things like Leyline of Sanctity. So
yeah, it's another 2 mana 4 damage spell, which is nice to see because there's already Boros Charm, and this is a nice complement to Boros Charm. Although it could also just replace it.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll necessarily replace it just because Boros Charm has multiple modes that could be useful, but like I'm sure, like I said, the mono red decks will probably make use of it more than the Boros decks might. So
there was a black red burn deck I think that used a Bump in the Night.
Yeah, it was one of the first burn decks I ever played in Modern.
I wonder what it was that made that deck sort of fall off.
Probably just the printing of better burn spells and better cards would be my guess.
Yeah, and I think the flexibility of the sideboard of Boros. It's basically Boros has a better sideboard. The mono red prowess has a better main deck.
Yes, like that's how I see it because Boros can answer things like if you want, you can play things like Wear and Tear, Smash to Smithereens, answer problematic enchantments or artifacts in Boros, and then the prowess is just faster in game 1.
I definitely prefer those versions to the old Naya version that had Destructive Revelry, I believe, in the sideboard.
Yep.
What do you think about the Dragon Approaching card in different formats?
Which card?
It's a 3 mana, 3 to each opponent, and if you played it a certain number of times, you can search out a dragon and plop it on the field.
Oh, it could be okay in Commander. I don't know if I'd necessarily play it in like Standard or Pioneer or Modern, but I could probably see it in like Commander possibly.
I was thinking that could be one of the things that brings heavy burn strategies back into Commander.
Yeah, I could see that.
I see some decks with burn, but like a true burn deck, it's hard to find enough efficient burn spells to make a deck. Especially because of how many players you have to burn.
Right, like my core brand deck, for example, is kind of like tailored for multiplayer play, so I have to play things like Burning Earth and Mana Barbs and stuff that hurts each opponent as opposed to one opponent.
Yeah, I have some of those cards, some of those I call them tenderizer cards in my Mogus Makes My Dream Come True Rakdos Enchantress deck.
Okay.
Just get the opponent low enough that a couple of shots will do it.
Right. I also play a lot of pingers in my Torbran deck that like ping everybody when they tap. So
Yeah, I play a couple of cards like that. Or I had a pinger deck that was Simic Pingers, and it ran Experiment Crotch was the commander, and it was just a bunch of pingers, and blue and green on tap effects and such. Then I also have a Varela the Whole Clod commander deck that's it loads the opponent's hands and bounces their stuff and then Storm Seekers them. So it's Burn and Simic.
that's funny.
I love Burn. I actually started playing Burn decks because I didn't understand how combat worked.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that I'm not sure if that was the case at all with you when you were starting, but I didn't understand how combat worked because I originally started playing Champions of Kamigawa. So there was Umezawa's Jit. There were modular cards from affinity decks. There was damage on the stack and Mog Fanatic tricks. And I just didn't understand combat, and so I either played flyers, burn spells, or mill.
Okay.
Like, I don't understand how this works. I just want you dead.
Kamigawa and Meriden seems like a difficult format to learn combat in.
So how did you learn combat tricks?
I basically just watched other people, like just PT videos or GP videos of like other people playing, how they use basically a pump spell as a Doom Blade or a pump spell to win the game. Like ideally, like your best scenarios of like pump spells, like red pump spells, is like use it as a Doom Blade or use it as. Like, you can even use it defensively if you need to.
So, speaking of pump spells, what do you think of Brute Force? That was the color shifted giant growth from Planar Chaos.
Yeah. I've played with it a little bit, but I don't know how. I think there's better cards in today's meta, so.
I was just thinking about, do you feel like it's within Red's identity?
It can be. I mean, depending upon which route you would want to go. It doesn't fall under the burn identity, but it can certainly fall under prowess or pump spells.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast and talking about the little red dudes and burn spells that support them.
So awesome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Cause you are
Rory Benezic, aka RorBearPig.
And people can find you at
Twitter.com/RorBearPig.
Awesome. And they can also find you at Skull Symbol, which is an awesome interactive community. Thank you very much and hope you have an awesome day.